All right, let's talk about Jacques Lacan. He's one of the most brilliant, but also one of the most notoriously difficult thinkers in psychoanalysis. Today, we're going to try and demystify him a little bit by diving into one of his most important works, Seminar 5, Formations of the Unconscious. It's where he really starts to map out the very structure of our inner world.
But to get started, I want to ask you a simple question. What if your unconscious had a sense of humor? Seriously, what if the real key to understanding why we dream, why we make those little slips of the tongue, and what actually drives our deepest desires could be found in something as simple and as complicated as a joke?
Because that wild idea is pretty much the starting point for this whole seminar. So here's our game plan. We're going to see how the unconscious tells jokes, why a punchline needs an audience, and then we're going to take a leap into how the father becomes a metaphor. After that, we'll look at Lacan's actual map of desire and wrap up by figuring out why your desire might not actually be your own.
Okay, first up, Lacan's big argument is that if you want to understand the unconscious, you don't have to go digging around in some deep, dark, mysterious part of your mind. Nope. You just have to listen really, really closely to the wordplay that's happening right there on the surface. And his entry point for all of this? It's Freud's work on jokes.
See, the core idea here is that the unconscious is structured like a language. It's not just some chaotic mess of repressed feelings. For Lacan, all those weird things our psyche does, a bizarre dream, a Freudian slip, a really clever pun, they aren't random at all. He called them formations, and he says they all follow the exact same rules as language. Metaphor, which is all about substitution, and metonymy, which is about connection and association.
The key term we need to know is the German word Witz. Now, you could just translate it as joke, but it's really more like witticism. We're not talking about a simple knock-knock joke here. A Witz is a sophisticated linguistic event. It's that moment where language itself seems to play a trick on us. And in that little trick, the very structure of the unconscious reveals itself. So for Lacan, it's an analytic tool, not just something to laugh at.
Okay, so if the unconscious is structured like language and it tells these witty jokes, how does that actually work? Let's get into the mechanics, because a joke told in an empty room, well, it's not really a joke, is it? It needs someone else.
This is the star example that Lacan uses again and again, and he gets it from Freud. Someone is describing their patronizing rich uncle, and they say he treated them familiarly. Now, that's not a real word, but you get it instantly, right? It's a portmanteau. It's a brilliant condensation of two different ideas, familiar and millionaire, smashed into one supercharged word.
And here's the crucial part. Lacan isn't really all that interested in the hidden meaning, like trying to figure out if the person secretly hates their uncle. He's fascinated by the how, the pure linguistic technique of it all. The familiar witticism works its magic because of the wordplay itself. It's the mechanics of language that create that little spark of humor and insight.
So this breaks down into a three-part structure. First, you get a message that breaks the rules of normal language, familiarly. Second, it uses a linguistic trick, in this case, condensation. But that third step is absolutely essential. The joke doesn't land, it doesn't even exist, until someone else, an audience, what Lacan calls the other, hears it, gets it, and confirms it with a laugh. The joke only happens in that shared space of language between people.
And this is what makes a Witz so different from just regular comedy. Think about it. Someone slipping on a banana peel. That's comic. It's usually a two-way street, right? You laugh at them. But a Witz is triangular. You've got the speaker, the listener, and this crucial third point, the shared code of language itself, the field of the big other. The joke only works if all three of those points connect.
Okay, get ready for a pretty big leap here. Because Lacan takes this small-scale linguistic trick that we see in a joke, and he argues that this exact same process is at work in the single most important event in the formation of who we are, the Oedipus complex.
I mean, think about it. If the familiar joke is just a tiny little formation of the unconscious, the Oedipus complex is the main event. And Lacan's really radical idea here is that it's not just some messy family drama about love and rivalry. He says it's a purely structural, purely linguistic operation. At its core, it's a metaphor. He calls it the paternal metaphor. Now, the name of the father isn't your actual dad. It's a master signifier that stands in for everything else, for law, for society, for culture, for all the rules. And this massive signifier comes in and it replaces, it substitutes itself for what was there before, the all-encompassing, totally undefined desire of the mother, which for the child was the entire universe.
So just look at this slide. Before this huge substitution happens,
The child's whole reality is defined by one giant, overwhelming question. What does my mother want? It's everything, and it's nothing. It's totally formless. Then the name of the father enters the picture. It doesn't answer the question, but it provides a structure, a law, that organizes that chaos and gives the child a place in the world. One signifier takes the place of another, and that single act creates the very foundation of our reality.
So we've seen how language, through jokes and these massive metaphors, literally structures who we are. But how can you possibly visualize a journey that complex? Well, Lacan, being the ultimate structuralist, decided he needed a map.
And it's in this seminar that he starts sketching out one of his most famous, or maybe infamous creations, the graph of desire. It's not a normal map, it's a topological schema. It's a way of drawing how our desire is literally forged by our journey through the pathways of language.
And here it is. This is the first, most basic version of it. He calls it the elementary cell. I know, it looks strange, right? It's kind of like a circuit diagram for the human soul. But trust me, every single line and every point on this map has a very specific meaning. So let's break it down.
Okay, let's decode this thing. That horizontal arrow at the top, think of that as the constant flow of language that we're all born into. Now, follow the looping path. That's us. We start out as this pre-linguistic, biological being. That's the delta symbol. But to become a subject, our path gets intercepted by that chain of language. We're forced through it. And we pop out the other side as the split subject. That's the S with the bar through it. We're now subjects of language, split from our pure biological needs. And that intersection point? That's where it all happens. That's where simple need gets transformed into complex symbolic desire.
So, we have this map. What does it actually tell us? Why does it matter? Well, this brings us to the really profound takeaway from this whole seminar, and it's an idea that could radically change how you think about who you are and what it is you want. What this crazy-looking graph really shows us is that what we think we want, our conscious intention, never travels in a straight line. It's always forced through these narrow passages, Lacan calls them defiles, of language. Our intentions get bent, twisted, and shaped by the language that was there long before we were, the language of the other. Which means we don't just speak language. In a very real way, language speaks us.
And this all leads us to one of Lacan's most famous, most powerful statements, one that basically sums up this entire explainer. The unconscious is the discourse of the other.
So what on earth does that mean? It means your unconscious isn't some private hidden vault that's unique to you. It's made of the words, the laws, the cultural rules of the other, your family, your society, your history. Your deepest desire is fundamentally a desire to be recognized by this other. What you want is shaped by what you believe the other wants from you. It's a message that comes to you from the outside and it gets returned to you as your own desire.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. If the unconscious really is the discourse of the other, and all of our desires bubble up from that unconscious, who is really speaking when you say the words, I want? It's a pretty radical question, and it's the puzzle that Lacan leaves us all to solve.